Hello, so we've made it to the 1st of July. New month, new candles, new balls, please, as we have got Wimbledon here in the UK. And we've got also quite in North America, we've got a bit of a shortened holiday trading week because of the 4th of July holiday on Friday, and non-farm payrolls have been brought forward to Thursday, a day earlier than normal. So we have got 2 days, and then we've got non-farm payrolls, and then pretty much the United States will shut down for the holiday and a long holiday weekend. One of the patterns that you tend to see quite a lot around holiday weekends is that if you're in a strong trend and you see a pullback ahead of that holiday weekend, what you tend to see is the trend resume after the holiday weekend, and vice versa. If you are in a strong downtrend and you keep going right into the holiday, then if you're going to get that kind of bounce around it or reversal, it will come after. So actually, if we apply that to what's going on in stock indexes, which are like the S&P and the Nasdaq are testing really important previous highs, if we apply that going into the holiday this weekend, then a bit of a pullback this week actually is more bullish. And we've still got a huge amount of uncertainty out there. So it feels like the start of the month is a little bit of a lull before the storm. We have still got a lot of the tariff deals are not done in the United States, although there's really bullish stuff going on for crypto generally. All of that outside stuff, can tip you right off balance. Although we have got everything's calmed down after the war, the attacks on Iran. There is no ceasefire. So, unless they start talking and negotiate something more permanent, it's just a pause, a lull, and it could really all start up again. Or certainly the rhetoric could, and it could get the market very nervous. And I think Iran learned a really good lesson that all they had to do was mention shutting down the Straits of Hormuz, and then everything gets brought to conclusion very quickly. So let's start with if we are going to see a bounce this week rather than a pullback, it's going to be today on the 1st. Quite often this is like a Monday, a mutual fund Monday, where people who buy stuff weekly or monthly today could see the day. So if we're going to see a bounce in stock indexes this week, and stocks that we're watching, today is likely to be the day. I'm going to take a look at MicroStrategy because that quite often is going to benefit from it. Let's take a look at where we are with that one, because that has definitely been underperforming Bitcoin, and it looks to me like we are about to see a little bit of a nice bounce in this one. So if we take a look at where we are in MicroStrategy, unlike Bitcoin, it's not just under new highs. Here we are well underneath the 2024, but MicroStrategy is still really outperforming. I had originally, if we take a look at this pullback, drawn my fibs from this high to low, and they weren't really working. And when that happens, you kind of need to bin them. So if I put fib retrace levels on from this high to low, if we're going to keep going and do a deeper pullback to this 38.2, which is at 350, then that's kind of what I was looking for. I was looking for 3 waves down, 3 waves up, and another swing lower to this 350, or maybe a little bit lower, possibly back to this 200 moving average. It could end up that we were to do this slowly. This catches up and they say high somewhere here at the end of the, in August or the end of the summer, and then we carry on higher again. Because when you're in this golden ratio zone, you can go sideways and it be very choppy. And we've basically been here since, mid-end of May, which would be a very normal pattern for sell in May. For now, though, everything looks pretty okay. Normally, this 50% level through the middle is a bit of a pivot level. All of our moving averages here on the daily are setting up pretty bullish. They're pretty bullish here on the weekly. no reason to say that this is anything other than a sideways trading in an uptrend. But this 50% level would be the first level that I would be looking for support, and maybe a little bit underneath towards this 50 moving average. But if we are going to see a bounce today, I think if we may not get it, it would be most likely to be today. Why may that not happen in stocks? And that really is, whether people want to take the risk into a shortened trading week, a 3-day holiday weekend, and non-farm payrolls. It may be that the market wants to get those kind of bumps out of the way, and the reloading really begins on Monday. And so again, this just could be a tricky week. One of the things that makes me always nervous is a kind of what looks like a 3-wave measured move. I'm not sure that that's exactly what we are looking at here in MicroStrategy, but there is, I would say, back underneath this 387 level potentially sets us up for a bigger leg lower in MicroStrategy. We're not quite out of the woods yet with this one. If we take a look at where we are in Bitcoin, the monthly close was perfect, higher close, but the tails on this candle are a little bit of a doji pause. So it's basically, in terms of monthly, an inside bar doji, which is indecision, bullish but sideways consolidation. So sideways at new highs isn't a reversal, it's just sideways, and that fits with kind of what we saw on the weekly, this channel that we've really been in since the end of May. And as I said before, I really wanted to see this if we're going to break out above 109,000. So, and we did not manage to do that. We got pretty close to it, but we have not managed to break out. For now, I think that there is, because we didn't quite tag the level, there is, I think, a chance that we retest these highs. That would be a very Bitcoin thing to do. And in terms of trend, when we look at this, the previous swing low, if we hold that support, we are still trending higher. We're still riding above these daily moving averages. We're still riding well above these weekly moving averages. So if we are going to see a bounce today, then this previous swing low from Friday is where in spot Bitcoin, is where I would like to see hold, basically 106,000. Underneath there, I think we see a bigger pullback and potentially another leg lower. One of the things that always makes me nervous when I look at this, so corrections normally, right, if they're 3 waves, they will look like this. And the B leg in the middle is always very clearly 3 waves, right? And sometimes you'll go kind of sideways like this, and then you'll carry on. And sometimes the B leg in the middle will look very confusing like this, and then you'll carry on. And one of the keys that this is what you're seeing is if these two swings are equal, because they are then that little equal corrective measured move in the middle. And so if we do that here in Bitcoin and we say, okay, what if this was our first swing lower and then this is a ABC, then it would be a little bit of concern if these were exactly equal, and they kind of are. So we don't want to see that bigger pullback, because that would mean in Bitcoin that potentially this was our first swing lower, this is all still corrective, and then we see another swing lower equal to this one, and that would bring us back to that daily 200 moving average. So I'm being a little bit cautious, but that kind of fits with summer sideways range trading. For now, I think if we can, you can see how these daily moving averages, ever since we made the bottom way back in April, have been really good support in this trend. I would really like to see this hold above them if we're going to keep going higher. But if we get back underneath these daily moving averages and back underneath that 106,000 level, I think that there is a risk of another push lower in Bitcoin. So I got long down here. I'm holding and waiting to see how this plays out. I don't really kind of want to let it all the way pull back there. Some other altcoin charts have been making a little bit kind of a bigger, more bearish patterns. I really want to get a bigger position in ETH, and I really want to get a bigger long on, but with these, you can see how important this daily 200 moving average has been in ETH. It's previously been support, then resistance. So we had resistance, resistance, resistance. We did a nasty pattern where we washed through it, and it's back to being resistance again. So again, I got along this one, and I've cut this because I'm waiting to see. There is, I think, a risk of more sideways this week, and I'm looking for a better entry. In this one, I kind of didn't like this double top, triple top swing failure pattern that we made. I think that that kind of puts at a risk of just sideways trading, and potentially one of the rules that always works really well for me is mean reverting markets tend to keep mean reverting. So if we look from the low back in April in ETH, you can see that we pull back exactly to a 50% retrace, and the level then, if we're going to break out from this 50% back pattern, was getting and holding above the 50%. That's what we couldn't do, 2,500, and that means in this double top pullback scenario that we're making, the most likely pullback then is going to be 50% from this low to high, which is lower than where we are now, 2,319. Very choppy and difficult to trade. Whenever your moving averages are flat like this on the 4 hour, it means you really haven't got any trend. You're just kind of going sideways. And so I do think that there is a little bit of risk. We see a 3-wave move. But if we get down here to this 50% level, 2,319, I'm going to back up the truck, as they say, and buy some more. So there were a few charts that I was watching for bigger moves higher that have not played. One of them was Fetch. Let's talk about why. So why I kind of really like this. So I really like this because from the lows in April, this looks 5 waves up, 3 waves back. Everything kind of lining up pretty nicely. If I put my 50%, we did one of those 61.8 things. Now, I still think that this can go higher because we have not got up to that 38.2 level. I was hoping that this would turn into a little, on a 4-hour inverted head and shoulders pattern. But when you do that, you kind of need the left shoulder and the right shoulder to be pretty balanced. And this went on too long. So that's why I cut my longs, and I'm going to wait for a better entry. And I think that this is likely to be a bigger ABC. And then I'm looking for this to go higher again. So flat and sideways, and waiting for another long entry. I'm not bearish this one. If we go back to the daily, if you're a trend trader, you kind of really want it to start recovering some of these daily moving averages, because unless we do, there is a risk of a bigger move. But for now, I see this as a really strong move, and I'm looking for a 3-wave correction here and then continue higher and Fetch. So just not ready to reload on the long side in that one. I am long Fartcoin though. Let's take a look at where we are with this one. We're in no man's land. In between, so this is a daily chart, flat moving averages. Here's a daily 20 and daily 50, and we are stuck in between them, which you sometimes do. You kind of look for moving averages to be support when you're in an uptrend, and resistance when you're in a downtrend and you bounce back to them. And then when you go flat, you kind of get a little bit of a sideways thing. So I would have been extremely bullish if we could have closed above this daily 50, and we didn't. So we're a little bit sideways here, but we haven't quite reached a measured move level. A close back underneath the daily 20, and I will probably cut my long and wait for a bigger 3-wave pullback. But for now, I'm still seeing this as sideways and keep going higher. Another way to negation levels for me, if I put fib retrace levels on from this low to this high, a close underneath that 236 fib says bigger pullback straight away to me. And so in Fartcoin, that's at 1.0929, and that's where we've tested today so far, but not underneath it. And so a little bit sideways here. I'm hoping this is a three-wave correction and this continues higher, but a daily close underneath 1.0929, I'll cut and wait for a bigger pullback. For now, this is just kind of flat sideways, no man's land, and I got in at a good place, so I'm going to hang on and wait and see if that keeps going. There's a few coins that I keep talking about. Useless is one. So if I remember, I take these big three-wave correction and I look at fib extension levels, and if they work, then you can keep leaning on them. So if we do that from this high to low, and this is my fib settings levels, you can see these are fib levels that I use, so we can put in more if we wanted to. This goes up forever, and we just kind of go level to level to level. The most important ones for me are always 1.618, 2.618, and 4.236. And I have a kind of rule about these important big fib levels. If you blast through them, so if we were to blast through this 1.618, I then look for it to be support if we're going to keep going higher. Same with this 2.618. We got resistance, then we blasted through it and it was support. And so here we've blasted through this 4.236 fib level. Sometimes if you overshoot, the pattern you see is an inverted head and shoulders or a head and shoulders. This really kind of isn't one. We're looking underneath this level at the moment. I have to say that the daily close is what's important. And as long as we don't close underneath 0.185, I still see this continuing higher. And if holding this level means we are still higher to 0.297. Getting underneath, or a daily close underneath this level, if you're long, if we do, then I would look for bounces and sell or take profit and wait for a bigger pullback in useless. That's the kind of fib rules that I tend to employ. I think we could see volatility increase through the summer. You know, it's really unusual. This is the Deribit overlay. This is Deribit volatility index. It's really low. Previously, whenever we've seen it down here, we tend to see a big kind of move or an expansion in volatility. So I would not be surprised to see that happen as well. Let's take a look at a couple more. So one of the charts that keeps having trouble is this. This is Ripple. So let's take off a few squiggles here. From this high to low, this 50% retrace and the daily moving averages have been really tricky. We have not been able to close above them. And the problem again with this 50% rule is we're a little bit of a risk here in Ripple, having reversed at a 50% level, that we're going to see a bigger 50% pullback. At the moment though, just like Fartcoin, which I'm long, we are trapped in between these daily moving averages and not looking at that bigger pullback yet. We could just go sideways here and then continue to push higher. But a daily close underneath this daily 20 moving average at 2.17, I think that we could see a bigger pullback in Ripple to 2.11 and 50%, and then likely bounce 50%. And then we see where we go from there. If we continue underneath 2.11, I think that we are still, unfortunately, headed lower in Ripple, and I would lighten up my position in that one. Solana I got pretty excited about because there were a few that had really important big 50% levels. Let's talk about them. And again, this is one of those 61/8 from all-time highs to lows in Solana. So that means from the lows in January 23 to the highs that we made in January 25. We're in that really tricky golden ratio zone, again, in between the 61/8 and the 38.2. This 50% level before has been a little bit of a key pivot level. We broke above it, but we couldn't get above this daily 50 moving average. So this is starting to look a bit like a false breakout of this channel. And when I see that, I tend to kind of widen my channel to fit. And we could still argue, therefore, it looked like a breakout, but it wasn't. It also looks like a little bit of a three-wave move, and that, unfortunately, means that we could see more. Here's the rule when I see a three-wave measured move like this. Let's hide a few things. For me, a three-wave measured move like this, which we have made, if you get underneath a 236 fib, the most common retrace is 786, which would be all the way down here at 134. So we kind of really need to hold this daily 20 moving average in Solana, otherwise we are likely to see a bigger pullback to 134 in 3 moves before we try again to go higher. So I'm watching this one closely. This week, if you'd like to buy more of some stuff, I think this week could potentially give us some of those bigger pullbacks. There's a few bigger picture charts that I really like. I keep looking at. So one of them is with dog with hat. These are kind of, for me, leading indicators. If these start reversing the trend and going higher than the whole market can. And again, this is another one where I think we made a really decent rally off the lows in April. And this does look like a three-wave pullback. It's just we're struggling to get it going. And just like Solana, if we draw from these lows to highs, we're in that tricky zone, 61.8, 50% in the middle, looking for it to, do a pullback and go higher. This double top for me kind of keeps me out to wait and see. This is clearly important support and resistance here around 0.88, and this double top usually means back to the bottom of this sideways range before I might try again with the right price action to buy some. So yeah, this is just one of those weeks when we're going to have to apply some patience and just remember that a pullback like this going into a longer holiday likely gives us a bigger opportunity and better one later.